There was a maiden long ago, bright eyes, green as pears, born outside the castle wall, was this fair maid, and it was said, all hearts owed her sway. She lived with her father. She had no mother. And her father had one pear tree. And every year he would fill one sack with pears and take it to the gate and leave it for the king. But this year the tree had yielded only a few pears, and the sack was not full. And if he left the sack which was not full for the king, what would happen? So he had no choice. He took his young daughter and he put her in the sack. And he put the pears on top so that the sack seemed full. And he left the sack of pears outside the castle. He had never been inside. The castle gates were opened and the maidservants carried the sack of pears into the castle. And inside the sack, the little girl heard the sounds of the castle, the music, the fine languages. She was taken into the kitchens and she could smell delicious food cooking. And then she was left. She had nothing to eat. So the little girl in the sack, what did she eat? She ate pears. And after some time, the maidservants came into the kitchen and looked to get some pears. And they found pear cores. And underneath the pear cores, a beautiful young girl with bright eyes, as green as pears. They decided that they would call her Purina. Purina, you're so beautiful. Now, Purina grew up in the castle kitchens, and she was good, she worked hard. Everybody loved her. She was kind. Everybody loved her, and nobody loved her more than the prince, the king's son. They were the same age, and they grew up together. The king was not happy about this. His prince, his son, playing with a girl from the kitchens. The other maidservants who worked in the kitchens were jealous. Purina and the prince, as they grew into young man and young woman, they fell in love. The maidservants went to the king. Your Majesty, Purina says that she can steal the treasure from the giant. Is this true? Purina, they say that you can steal the giant's treasure. Go from this castle and do not return until you have it. Purina didn't know what he was talking about. She was thrown out of the castle. She couldn't return without it. She ran, one foot lifting her up, the other foot setting her down, until she came to a pear tree. She climbed into the pear tree and she picked one pear. And she bit into the pear and it was sweet and juicy, delicious. And as she was crying, she fell asleep. And when she woke up, underneath the tree, there was an old woman. Child, why are you so sad? I must steal the giant's treasure, but I don't know how. Child, I will help you. I will give you some bread. I will give you some oil, and I will give you a song. Well, Purina took the bread and the oil and the song, and she started to walk. She walked, walked and walked. She walked towards the mountains. The mountains were high and dark. And finally, at the end of the day, she came to a wide river, and the river's waters were flowing red like blood. There was no bridge. How could she cross the river? But then she remembered the song that the old woman had given her. It went like this. Are you ready? Fine river so red, Fine river so red, let me cross.
Let me cross.
If you don't,
If you don't,
my life is lost.
my life is lost.
And the red waters of the rivers parted. And she jumped down into the riverbed and she ran across and climbed out the other side. And once she had climbed out the other side, the waters flowed once again. And now she started to climb up the mountains towards a high, dark castle. And there were clouds of thunder above that castle. And she knew that was where the giant lived. But as she climbed the mountain, 3 great black dogs came running down the mountain towards her. And they were snarling and biting. They were surely going to attack her. But then she remembered the bread. She broke the bread into 3 pieces and threw it for the dogs. And the dogs started to eat, and she could pass. And she climbed higher and higher, and she came to the castle gate. And the castle gate was opening and closing. Crash, bang, crash, bang. How could she get inside? And then she remembered the oil. And she went up to the gate, and she put oil onto the gate. And the oil helped the gate to open smoothly. And Purina passed inside the castle. And she walked along a long corridor, and she came to the bottom of a staircase. And she started to climb. And at the top of the staircase, she found herself in a big room. And in the middle of the room was a huge bed, and inside the bed, a great nose of the giant. The bed she came and she looked and where was the treasure? She couldn't see the treasure. And she looked under the bed. And under the bed she saw a box of treasure. So she took the box of treasure and started tiptoeing back towards the staircase. But as she was tiptoeing back, the box of treasure started to chant. Giant! Wake up! Wake up! Giant! Giant! Wake up! Wake up! Giant! And the giant rose up from the bed and started running towards the girl. She ran down the staircase as quickly as her legs would carry her. She ran down quickly all the way to the bottom. And then she ran along the corridor, but the giant was coming after her all the time. And she ran along the corridor to where the gate was opening and closing. Crash, bang, and the treasure started to sing. Gate, stop her, gate. Gate, stop her, gate. But the gate didn't stop her. The gate opened because she had given the gate oil. And now she ran out of the castle. But now the thunderclouds had burst and a storm had broken. And as she ran from the castle, she ran into a storm. And she started running down the mountain and coming the other way with the 3 black dogs. And they were snarling and biting. And the treasure started to shout, dogs, bite her, dogs, dogs, bite her, dogs. But did the dogs bite her?
No.
Because she had given the dogs bread. And the dogs let her pass. And the giant was coming after her. Down the mountain and towards the river. And she came to the river. And the river was red and deep. And the treasure chest started to sing, river, drown her, river, river, drown her, river. Did the river drown her?
No.
Because she had given the river a song. And she sang the song. Fine river so red, let me cross. If you don't, my life is lost. And the river's waters opened, and she jumped down into the riverbed and was running across the river. But the giant had come in after her, and the giant was coming behind, and she could feel his hot breath on her neck, and he was reaching for her as she climbed out the other side. But the giant was too late, for as she climbed out, the river waters closed over the giant, and the giant was washed away. And if that giant lived or not, that story I have not got. But now Purina had the treasure, and she carried on her journey back to the castle. But she was tired, and she stopped. And she looked at the box of treasure, and she started to think, I wonder what is inside. She was curious. Young girls are often curious. Did she look? What do you think was inside the box? Jewellery?
Yeah.
Nothing? What other ideas?
Golden
Money,
coins.
golden coins. Well, she looked in the box, and inside the box there were 3 eggs. Normal eggs. And as she looked at the eggs started to crack and hatch, and out of the eggs came 3 golden chicks. And the golden chicks jumped out of the eggs and started running along the path in front of her so fast she ran after them, but she couldn't catch them. Oh, I have lost the treasure. I have nothing, just the empty box. And with a heavy heart, she walked along the path back towards the castle. And she came to the pear tree. And she climbed into the pear tree, and she was crying, and she picked a pear, and she bit, and it was sweet and juicy and delicious. And she felt good. And she fell asleep. And when she woke up, who was under the tree? Child, why are you so sad? Here, look. And Purina climbed down from the tree, and she took the box, and she opened the box. And what was inside? The 3 eggs.
Golden.
The golden chicks. Would you like to see?
Yes.
Ready? It was the 3 eggs. But she closed the lid quickly because she didn't want them to escape. And she took the box of treasure and she came back to the castle. And there at the castle door was waiting for her the prince. Purina, you have returned. I thought that I would never see you again. Oh, my love. And you have the treasure. Take it to my father, the king. He will give you anything your heart desires. So Purina went with the treasure to the king's chamber. But before she went, she made a plan with the prince. Purina, you have returned. You have the treasure. Oh, my goodness. The 3 eggs. Thank you. You are clever. Purina, you can have anything your heart desires. All I want, Your Majesty, is 1 big sack of pears from the kitchen. A sack of pears from the kitchen. Is that all? Very well. And a sack of pears was bought from the kitchen. A big sack, much bigger than this. And when Purina opened the sack of pears, inside there were pears, but also out of the bag stepped the prince. My son! You two are too clever for me. You have done well, Purina. You have proved yourself wise and clever and kind. You may marry my son. A great wedding was prepared. Everybody was invited from far and near. A great festival and dancing. Purina was married to the prince, and many years later, when the king died, she became the new queen. There was a young queen long ago, bright eyes, green as pears, born outside the castle walls was this fair queen, and it was said, all hearts owed her